In the second part on innovation, we take a look at disruptive innovation, open innovation, innovation capital, and continuous innovation. But first, a quick note on innovation thinking compared to design thinking. Every product or service is ultimately the result of an innovation at some point in the past. Innovation always brings a benefit. Design thinking, on the other hand, is a specific approach that is user-centric to conceiving ideas for innovations. It uses concepts that warrant a workshop on their own. And these include things like visualization, mind mapping, value chain analysis, assumption testing, prototyping, storytelling, etc. While there's huge overlap between the two types of thinking, design doesn't necessarily bring a benefit, whereas innovation does. So let's move on to disruptive innovation. And what is disruptive innovation? Well, disruptive innovation is an innovation that creates a new market by providing a different set of values, which ultimately overtakes an existing market, often unexpectedly. So it's not necessarily the technology, a new technology, that makes an innovation disruptive. It's more the combination of the technology, price, and availability, in fact, the whole value proposition. It surpasses that which exists in the market at the time. So a new high-tech product might carry a high price tag, and then that wouldn't necessarily be as disruptive innovation, as the price tag prevents it from widespread access by the general public. So typical examples would be, on the technology front, the iPhone and the BlackBerry, Nokia. While the iPhone carried a premium price, the number of benefits that went with the iPhone far outweighed the marginal extra price you were paying above a BlackBerry. Uber and Lyft, for example, use technology and the gig economy to gain a huge share of the traditional taxi market. And then the music industry is a whole new story on its own. The music industry over the past 40 years is a great example of disruptive innovations. Way back in the late 70s, the clunky 8-track cassette was seen as the future of music because of its mobility. Then along came the smaller compact cassette, and it completely took over the market, and the 8-track was never seen again. The cassette also killed off vinyl to a large extent because it could be played both at home and in the car. Then along came the compact disc, which could do both as well and gave a higher performance. Then around 2000s, the whole music industry declined because of the onset of the internet, and people were availing free music through illegal streaming channels and on the free music available on YouTube. And it's only in the last decade or so that sales have started climbing again through the legal streaming sites, where over half of sales now come through either Spotify or iTunes. So it's a great example of an industry that was in constant change, and if you weren't looking out over your shoulder, you could have been wiped out very quickly. We move on now to open innovation, what it is and why companies use it. Well, companies use it because they recognize that not all the smart people in the world work for them, and that their own in-house R&D can't create the innovations necessary to stay competitive. How do they then use open innovation? They do it by sharing the technology, either through collaboration with stakeholders, universities possibly, or even startups. So for example, some companies might come up with innovative ideas and find that they're outside their own capabilities or objectives. So licensing these ideas to startups is one solution. So what is innovation capital? Well, innovation capital is basically the reputation one has for innovation. We'll take a historic example first before we look at modern examples. Engineers will recognize these two inventors from the early days of electricity generation and distribution, that is, Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Edison was famous for the carbon microphone, phonograph, stock ticker, mechanical vote recorder, motion picture camera, light bulb, while Tesla was famous for the radio, wireless communication, hydroelectric generation, electric distribution, the electric motor. So while Tesla was by far the greater intellect and innovator, I mean, even Einstein said when asked what it was like to be the smartest man alive, he said, "I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla." Edison's ability to win backers, collaborators, and attention for his ideas was much greater. So when Edison developed a commercially viable light bulb, he was able to convince J.P. Morgan Bank to advance him $30,000 to set up the Edison Electric Light Company, which is now General Electric. He had built up enough innovation capital that he had no problem getting backers for his ideas. He was ruthless to the point of publicly electrocuting an elephant in order to rebuff Tesla's AC distribution system. Now, Tesla, on the other hand, had hundreds of patents. In particular, his AC distribution system was far superior to Edison's DC distribution system. However, he was very much more an altruistic innovator and lacked the commercial capabilities of Edison. He ended up being cheated out of many of the spoils of his invention, and he ultimately died penniless. And though he never profited from it, the entire mass communication systems we use today are based on Tesla's groundbreaking system of wireless communication. So the difference between success and failure there was innovation capital. Edison had it, Tesla didn't. Modern day individuals with huge innovation capital include Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who are relentless in their pursuit of innovation. Not only should a company be innovative, but innovation should be a continuous process within the company. Here's an interesting quote from Jeff Immelt, the former CEO of General Electric. "Nobody wants to work for an old-fashioned company. Nobody wants to buy products from an old-fashioned company. Nobody wants to invest in an old-fashioned company." Wise words. Continuous innovation underscores the modern company. In the traditional 20th century company, new products were basically variants of existing products, and you gained more sales by spending more money on the traditional print, television, advertising media, or even trade shows. There were often high barriers to entry, and competition grew slowly. And you had steady growth rates governed by quarterly targets. The structure of the company was basically managers and subordinates. Capital budgets were for fully funding projects to completion. And failure was frowned upon, often with the statement, failure is not an option. In a modern company, products can be conceived and built anywhere in the world nowadays. Digital marketing dominates the marketing spend. And production can be rented, and backroom functions can be outsourced anywhere in the world. Technology now inspires disruptions and rapid growth. The focus is on long-term results, and the company structure is now more leaders and entrepreneurs, encouraging people to be innovative. Innovation projects are funded through a system called metered funding, which is similar to how venture capitalists would fund startups. And failure that's productive can be rewarded once that learning from the failure is brought to the next task. And finally, a reputation for innovation affects the market value of a company by some 3 times its asset value. A survey by Compustat of the S&P 500 companies showed that the top 10% of companies with a reputation for innovation had market value multiplier of just over 3. Now, this may go a long way to explain why a company like Amazon has 3 times the market value of Walmart, yet both companies have more or less the same value in asset value.